The collector car market, is it a bubble waiting to burst? Which cars are hot, which are not? We've got all the answers today on After Drive. Come back. Okay, so if you've watched After Drive shows before where we talk about which cars to buy, collector cars, the collector car market, a lot of the information we get comes from this man to my right. It's Rob Sass from Hagerty Insurance, a valuation expert par excellence, a guy that I went to Pebble Beach at the auctions, and he came in within like $100 in some cases to what the car is actually auctioned for. It was pretty amazing stuff. He's got a ton of information. Good to have you on the show, sir.
Nice to be here.
Yeah,
Thanks.
good to finally get you on here. And Zach Moseley, of course, from Classic Car Club Manhattan, where we are right now. So, and Zach obviously has been on the show where we've talked about other cars that are collectible. And
use Hagerty's tool.
You know, talking about collecting cars as a sort of financial thing, I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but you guys have a new thing that you're doing now. So tell me about that.
We do. It's called the Hagerty Market Rating. And essentially the two questions that we get all the time are, what's my car worth and what's the classic car market doing? And most of the time it was a lot easier to answer the former rather than the latter in terms of what's the overall market doing. So we took all the data that we have, and it's everything from insured data, auction sales, price guide, the Hagerty indexes, to a very, very big mountain of private sale data that we collect in the ordinary course of our business, and we've distilled it to this one number, a 0 to 100 number that reflects the status of the classic car market at any time.
So it's interesting because, you know, that's the question that I'm sure you guys get all the time, and when, you know, people ask us too, is, you know, it seems like prices keep going up and up and up and up on all collectible cars, and even some cars that we didn't think were collectible. And they want to know, is it a bubble that's going to burst? And am I going to lose all my money on it? And that's sort of, I know that that's something that you guys are trying to sort of focus on, I guess.
Yeah, and it's actually one of the reasons why we developed the market rating, is to take a look at the market factors and conditions that might be conducive to a bubble market. So it's a 0 to 100 scale. You're never going to see the two poles. 0 is Mad Max, it's the apocalypse.
Right.
100 is this crazy, impossible situation of hyper supply and hyper demand. 50 is kind of a flat market. What we look at is kind of the Goldilocks zone of a market that's growing in a healthy way, that's sustainable. It's anywhere from 60 to the high 70s. When it gets above 78 or 79, then we might be looking at the possibility of a bubble market. But we're at about 70 right now, and certainly everything that happened in Scottsdale seemed pretty healthy to us. It was all collectors buying cars that they want, sort of the rampant speculation of the last time around in the late 80s, early 90s, when there was a bubble that blew up. Really no signs of that right now.
Well, that's interesting, because Zach, we were talking about this before the show. Your question was like,
could there be a bubble? Because we've seen, especially because we're watching all the air-cooled 911s after our show, you know, a year and a half ago, seeing everything go up where some of it was getting unattainable to the point where you're like, yeah, it's a great car, but is that really going to be worth that kind of money? And I wonder if there's a bubble there, you know. And I get asked all the time, because now people are seeking advice from us to buy these things, saying, what do you think? Did I actually pay this much money for this?
Yeah, I don't think so with 911s. I mean, obviously the earlier ones, the long hood cars, went up the most and they went up the fastest. But the short hood cars, particularly the SCs and Carreras from 78 to 89, they went up a lot too. Cars that were high teens, low 20s, all of a sudden were high 30s, low to mid 40s cars. The fact of the matter is, they were just too damn cheap before.
Is that really, that's the case? Because they had been like, you know, 8, 9 grand, 10 grand for years and years and years.
Seriously, the notion that you could buy essentially an heirloom quality car, which is what SCs and Carreras are, for, and I bought one. I bought a very nice 82 SC, I think in summer 2012.
And then you played with all the numbers in your Hagerty valuation. You just sold it last year. I understand how this is going.
No, but I bought it before the run-up in prices and sold it 2 years later. But the fact of the matter is, when I bought it, it was just a car that was just conspicuously too inexpensive for what it was. They're fantastic cars, as you both know. They'll go 250 or 300,000 miles between engine overhauls with some good care. They're really resistant to rust, beautifully built, and one of those cars that any enthusiast should own at least once in their life. So At $13,000, $14,000, $15,000, they were just too cheap.
Right.
I think they're priced appropriately right now, and they've leveled off some in the last 6 months. You haven't seen really that sort of astronomical growth in the 911 market. So they've cooled.
I guess that brings up a good point, because most of the cars that we focus on in our show are those sort of like attainable, like you gotta get one of these cars now because they are too cheap cars. So, you know, it makes sense. I mean, any air-cooled 911 is a $30,000 or $40,000 experience at a minimum to drive. So why shouldn't the market be there? And why was it 13 grand for so long before?
Exactly.
So,
and they're not making any more, and they were just conspicuously too cheap. Everybody noticed, probably right around the same time, and the market adjusted.
Right. Is that still happening though? Is that like, are we looking at another 5 years of astronomical 911 growth, or what do you think?
At the moment, no. I think at the moment they've leveled off. Where you are still looking at really serious growth in the 911 world is any air-cooled turbo. 930, 964, 993, they've all just gone crazy over the last 6 to 9 months.
Wow. And before we forget, so, obviously, if you want to check out the Hagerty valuation tools, which we use all the time, it's Hagerty.com. And the new Hagerty market rating, how do you get to that? Is that on there?
Hagerty.com/market rating.
Okay, cool. And that's how, and so what else are you going to do in there? Are there going to be like, that's the overall market, but you can do individual cars, or are you going to do other stuff?
That's the overall market. You can also get to the sub-market indexes that we do. So if you want to dial down and see how the Ferrari market's doing, the muscle car market, 50s American, you can look at those individual sub-market indexes there too. But the new market rating is really supposed to be sort of a 30,000-foot view of the market as a whole. What's going on? How hot is it?
So another show that we did was the NSX show, and actually that was something that the NSX being a car generationally that we were really into, 20-something years ago, and we've seen the market rise on those. I mean, is that something that's also kind of moving along with the 911, or is it a different kind of cycle going on?
I think the NSX has got more to go right now. It sort of picked up later than the 911, and it's really a car that was overlooked for way too long. I mean, the snobs will say that they're bland. It looks like an Acura on the inside, but I got to tell you, I heard the same things about BMW M1s. Like when you get inside of it, it looks just like an E30. The fact of the matter is, it's a great car. Ayrton Senna was involved sort of tangentially in sorting it out in the beginning, and they didn't make that many of them. A lot of them just got used and abused. The good ones that are left are really, really worth investing in.
Yeah, and I think it's a similar category as the 911s we were talking about. I mean, they were so cheap, we kind of couldn't turn one down.
Yeah.
So now they're 35, 40 as a minimum to get into something decent. Sort of makes sense.
Yeah. And NSXs are kind of in the same area right now. I mean, you used to be able to buy early NSXs. $25,000, $26,000, $27,000, and those cars are gone. I mean, the $25,000 NSXs are really, really
pretty rough.
Yeah, the one that we had that we'd focus on in that story, we bought it for $27,000 with 44,000 miles on it. Good, honest, adult-owned, unmolested car.
The one adult-owned, unmolested NSX.
Right. Yeah, and doubled the mileage on it in 3 years. So we sold it 88,000 miles for $28,000.
Yeah.
So, we get to ride that wave a little bit as people started to appreciate it. And then we have seen that go up more. I mean, when I looked at the valuation tool for that, there was growth following the show. We were trying to take credit for everything. But it was already on its way, and it's a bit more gradual. It wasn't quite the immediate cliff that it jumped up.
Well, that brings up another question. Is like, I know car collecting is generally sort of generational, right?
Yes,
so if
absolutely.
you collect the cars that you were into as a child, I guess, is that the thing?
Yeah.
So now we've got all these people in their 40s, maybe late 30s, 40s, sort of edging maybe 50s, and they grew up with Japanese cars and BMWs of a certain kind and Porsches. Like, that's how, is it as simple as that? That's how this is working?
It really, not to give away the secret sauce, but yeah, to a large extent, that really is what drives a lot of collecting decisions. You want the aspirational car of your youth. So, not surprisingly, the dorm room wall poster cars from the 70s and 80s are very hot right now. Lamborghini Countaches, basically the Sonny Crockett era Ferrari Testarossas are seeing a bump right now. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Mitsubishi 3000 GT, is that just sort of waiting to?
That is absolutely waiting. If you have a low mileage 3000 GT VR4 Spider out there, we should talk. That is absolutely a
It's
car.
not worth anything. I'll write you a check for it tomorrow.
Right, exactly. You don't. That top mechanism breaks. You don't want to be around. I'll take that off your hands.
But I mean, that sort of begs the question
Yes.
of all those other cars. Nissan, the Z car of that era, 300ZX.
Fantastic car.
Yeah.
A fantastic car, and you can go out and buy a great one right now for under $10,000. That is, you'll be laughing all the way to the bank.
Right. So what about the market? Sort of looking at the winners and losers, because we look at the market as a whole going up.
Yes.
But we don't necessarily look at the kind of, get granular about which particular cars are actually doing what. Which one's going up and which one's going down. Is there anything that hasn't been performing well or that was?
It seems like there was an oversupply of Toyota FJ40 Land Cruisers out in Scottsdale. I mean, they had really been sort of the flavor of the month for a while, and really great ones were bringing at or over $100,000.
Well, we saw one in Pebble Beach that went for over 100.
Yes, absolutely.
That was amazing.
And at the time, believe it or not, it was one of the only Japanese cars on the planet to have broken at a public sale $100,000. This was obviously before the Skyline GTR, the Cosmo, and everything else sold. But it was pretty much the Toyota 2000 GT and the FJ40 Land Cruiser. Well, that seems to have cooled down a little bit. It seems like everybody who really had to have a fantastic FJ40 Land Cruiser bought one already.
Wow. So, I mean, for a while it was like in that and then the Bronco. Is the Bronco seeing the same kind of thing? Or is that the Bronco
for
holding it?
whatever reason, never got as crazy as the FJ40 Land Cruiser, and I have no explanation why. But they remain really attractive cars, particularly if you find one that's not rusty, hasn't had fender flares put on or had the fenders cut or something like that. A good stock Bronco is a really solid investment in fun.
Well, as you guys know, how many do you have, like 5?
Well, we have 2, but yeah, at one point last year we had 4 because basically we've had one in the fleet for the past 8 years, and every time
the market on orange Broncos.
Yeah, every time I have one in here, 3 people walk in throughout the year that say, I want one of those.
Yeah.
And can I buy yours? And like, maybe I'll sell mine and buy another, or maybe I'll help source them one, or maybe we'll build them one. So we've seen a lot of that. But the interesting thing I've seen, because I kind of shop in a different end of the market than the collector value. I'm actually looking, if something's been modified in a way that makes it run better, that ruins its value, that's actually good for me. so
true, yeah.
But in that world, there are a lot of Broncos that get messed around with, and people make, put in 5.0s, which we love, and do some suspension upgrades and stuff. And I've seen in that world, the Broncos actually have a pretty solid market. They're in like, 25, 30 range, maybe 40 for a nice one that's been built right. Whereas the modified FJs with a LS motor, which I also love, seem to be almost worth nothing.
Yeah.
At least they have been historically, So I'm surprised to see in the collector car world it's the other way around. The Broncos have no pace, but the FJ40's got up there.
That's interesting. I don't really have an explanation other than, the FJ40, you might be looking at people who are actually collectors and looking for originality, and Broncos, the whole resto mod phenomenon is just fine.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's like the Pantera of classic trucks. Like people actually,
that's a good analogy.
That's a car that just never worked if it was in a stock form, so everyone appreciates the upgrades.
Yeah.
So what about on the lower end? Because I mean, we not to take the wind out of Scottsdale, where another Ferrari sold for $10 million. But obviously that part of the market seems pretty healthy.
Yes.
What about like the other end? Like, what if I had like $3,000 in my pocket today? You guys did a show recently.
We did.
It was kind of interesting.
We did.
From
Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
Parachuted 3 people into Portland with $3,000 to spend on a car and about 8 hours to find one. We did okay. We wound up with a pretty clean 72 Beetle.
That's interesting because a Beetle to me feels like it's already kind of either it's just a junk market or because there's so many of them.
Yeah.
I don't mean it's a bad car, but I mean like either it's really cheap or the good ones have already gone like way up.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. It's a market with two parts. I mean, you've got the really fantastic over-restored ones that are better than Wolfsburg ever made them, and the ones that make this into a dune buggy or a sandrail or something because it's it's pretty far gone. But this was actually one of the few cars that was just a really good driver, just a decent, solid driver. I mean, nothing really special on any front, but a $3,000 car, and one that was, that had some eyeball.
Cool. Another one you guys did that I always wanted but I never bought was a first-gen Mazda RX-7. That was cool.
I loved that car.
How much was that?
That was $2,800, and it was. You can do this in Oregon,
right?
Because most people don't know cars tend to not rust. It's obviously wet as hell out there, but it doesn't snow. They don't use salt. And you generally see more moss growing on cars than rust. Right. So this one was a one-owner, original paint RX-7, a GSL SE with everything. I mean, the 32-button stereographic equalizer, leather seats and everything else. We paid $2,800 for it, and it was a fantastic car. I really enjoyed driving it.
That was like a $17,000 car new.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, for the time in '85, yeah. I mean, so now it would be like a $35,000 or $40,000, maybe $40,000 car.
Yeah,
which is kind of crazy when you think of it.
Yeah.
And then you had a third car, which I love, which a lot of people don't love very much, but it was the El Camino. But it wasn't. It was a Malaise era El Camino.
It was a '75 El Camino, like a Colonnade El Camino, with a 350 V8 that probably put out 140 horsepower,
but 300 pounds of torque, right?
Exactly, and working cold air conditioning. It was two-tone, again, completely original paint, rust-free. It's two-tone gold and white. I think we nicknamed it Goldie Hawn or something like that, with a brown bench seat that looked like somebody stole it out of a Denny's. It was
that definitely sounds like your next daily driver story. Is this car still available somewhere? You might sell it to him for $5,000.
It actually is.
I might have to consider that.
Yeah, we are getting ready to put the 3 cars on the market. They're sitting in Portland, Oregon.
Oh, that's right. So you're going to sell them all as a package, right?
Yeah, 3 cars for basically under 10 grand.
It's basically your dream fleet spinning. I mean, we've been doing our eBay challenges. We get the Hagerty challenge.
If you guys don't go for it, I might have to do that. I mean, I have to consider it because you get a Beetle. And you get the RX-7. I mean, the Beetle, like, why would not have a Beetle, right?
Yeah,
you might
exactly.
as well have a Beetle.
It's completely inoffensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The RX-7 is nostalgia for me, like going straight back. And an El Camino, like, why not have an El Camino? Because you should have an El Camino because, I could easily get a mullet. It's not hard at my level.
I was just going to say, you could go
back. You're halfway there.
Yeah.
Bill Clinton owned an El Camino.
He had a mullet. Did he not? I'm sure he had.
I'm sure he did.
Yeah,
an El Camino.
Exactly. I could do. I could definitely shave the sides.
Uniform, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Party in the front. So this is the thing. So a lot of people think it's business in the. They think it's business in the front and party in the back because you're having a party in the back. But no, it's not. It's actually the party in the front.
It's party everywhere. I loved it. I really did. I've never driven one before. I love driving it.
Right. But the original El Caminos, like if you bought the 396 El Camino, the party was in the front because you were driving. You got like a muscle car in the front, and the business was you could put like sheetrock in the back.
Yeah, you could essentially drive a Chevelle
or a mattress.
Or a mattress. Well,
and you have parties on both ends.
So that's just it's just that a lot of I've noticed that there are a lot of people thinking the party is one place and not the other. But so 10 grand and you get 3 collector cars. So now Hagerty does insure this kind of thing, right? I mean, like, do you insure? Like, is it?
Our limit is a little bit higher. In terms of, I mean, I believe it's $4,000 right now, so it's really not that much higher. Yeah. What we wanted to do really is, if you watch all the televised auctions, you can very easily get the impression that the entry level of the classic car world is somewhere north of $30,000 or $40,000.
Right.
So what we wanted to do was explore what we call the extreme entry level of the classic car world, and get 3 cars that aren't going to expire in some sort of Top Gear-esque cloud of white smoke in the first white miles. We put a couple hundred miles on all 3 cars. They did fine. They all looked respectable, and we paid $3,000 or less for all of them.
So there's no.
And we're going to do this again.
Well,
maybe here in New York.
Whoa.
Oh well, that's going to be tough.
Yeah.
You're going to find a lot of like 1999 Corollas and stuff.
Yeah.
Body Mustangs maybe.
Well, Mustangs, that's another one. The Fox Body Mustang. Mm-hmm. I have been, Matt Farah and I have talked about this before, and Matt talks about it all the time on his podcast. The Fox Body Mustang, to me, seems like there is, as they kind of become a little bit rarer because there were so many of them.
Yes.
Is the Fox Body Mustang something to watch, or are we just not there yet?
I think it is. I think we're getting there. The fact of the matter is, somebody somewhere should build a big bronze statue to the Fox Body Mustang, because it is one of the cars that you can say ended the malaise era. You really can. I mean, when, I think in 85 or 87, whatever year it was when they redesigned the cylinder heads, the car put out over 200 horsepower.
Yeah.
In SAE net, not gross horsepower. That was a big deal. I mean, that and probably the Camaro of around the same era was really sort of the end of the malaise era. So the car's a big deal. It's significant that way. It's sort of the entry level in V8 American performance right now. I love them. I hope that they get more respect. I mean, quite honestly, for me, I try to find an ex-California Highway Patrol notchback 5-liter Mustang,
well, that's the one.
black and white one. Be the one to own for me.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think a lot of people of our era too would say the first properly fast car they drove in was some kind of worked Fox Body Mustang.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had a friend with the one nitrous and all kinds of stuff,
Of
and it
course.
was the first time I just lost vision in a car because it went so fast. Like everything just went blurry.
Right.
With that kind of a nostalgia factor going for it, I
Yeah.
think it's pretty inevitable. So if you have one of the really nice 5-liter GT or LX Fox Body Mustangs with a 5-speed, you hang on to it right now.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it's the LX, because the LX was, to me, the sleeper. That was the
Yeah.
one. The notchback LX, well, even the fastback LX, but like the LX was the one where like your friend bought the GT and like his parents ended up getting mad at him because they ended up spending $16,500 for it, but he got his for $12 and it's faster.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And this is obviously $1985. So
Yes.
Anyway, so next for Porsche though, I mean, so we've been talking a lot about 911s. Are there other, what about the other kind of range of Porsches from that era? I mean, are they completely down in the dumps?
944s is never going
944s,
anywhere.
928s, 924s?
I don't know. It's an interesting question. I happen to like 944s. The absolute entry level of the Porsche world is the 924. The first series, the Audi engine 924 is super cheap. I mean, we're talking $3,000, $3,500. I know that Magnus Walker just bought a 924 turbo, so which is kind of interesting, but that's kind of the entry level. When you get into the 924S and the 944, they get more complicated. It gets into a car that has an interference engine, a timing belt that has to be changed religiously, and water pump that's hard to get to.
Balance shaft, all that
Yeah,
stuff.
and all that stuff. It's more complicated. I'm gonna swim against the stream, but I actually really kind of like the original 924 with the Audi engine. It's a non-interference engine.
Wow.
The timing belt breaks. You just stop, and at the side of the road you can change it, and everything's okay. They're beautifully balanced, great handling cars. Offset by a 4-cylinder engine that's kind of rough.
And you got to deal with, I mean, if you have to deal with 90 horsepower, so what, really?
Yeah. I mean, I think they range from like 96 to 110 horsepower. But yes, you are not dealing with, with a massive powerhouse of a car. Although the 924 turbos were decently quick, but they're nice handling cars.
Yeah.
And if you compare it to like a BMW 2002 or even an Alfa 2000 GTV, you're not that far off the mark performance-wise.
What about is the 928 just too complex to deal with to ever go up, or is that just a...
That's been the knock against it. The last of them, the 928 GTSs, never really got all that cheap, and they remain pretty expensive. I think that as the air-cooled cars get more expensive, people are going to start to look at particularly the early 928s that were the most pure. I would love the risky business era 928, essentially, with the phone dial wheels.
Yeah.
I would love one with those wacky sort of op art funhouse mirror checked seats.
The seats were amazing.
Yeah, they were just cool. They were
Yeah.
just nutty cool.
And the champagne paint job, of
yeah.
course.
Yeah, exactly. Which they all seem to be pretty much. But they're a complex car and an expensive car to maintain, and that really has been what's held them back. 944s. I don't know, the rare variants of them, the Cabriolets, which to me look really good, the
Wow, the
968s.
I would never have thought, because usually the cab is the one that's,
Porsche
that's
people.
kind of dogs
Porsche people, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
not on the cab, sort of the poser's car, but they're so rare and they're so good looking. They've got a cut down windshield that almost looks like a speedster,
Yeah.
a really cool top, and they're really scarce. So, there's a possibility there. I would tell you where probably the really smart money is going right now, but on the outside chance that the 996 turbos are criminally cheap right now.
That's what I've heard.
I mean, absolutely criminally nutty, stupid cheap right now. For mid-30s, you get a car that under the skin is 2/3 of a 959.
That is, you know that? I've never thought about that.
I instantly regretted saying that because I really would like to buy one at some point.
Just hold off a month on putting the show out.
Yeah.
No, seriously, literally, as soon as the words were out of my mouth, I'm like,
I mean, we've had a couple of those in the fleet, and our members are a little too spoiled now to go for it because they'll criticize the styling as being dated or whatever.
Yeah.
But
with the eggy headlights.
If we're being honest, and this will bring up all the flaming comments, like in most real-world conditions, it was 80% of the experience of a GTR that we was put in the fleet. You know, like it's this massive twin turbo thing. They're really fast still. You know, really fast, and really enjoyable cars to drive.
Yeah, there may be some time because you alluded to it earlier. They haven't really quite exited the just a used car area.
Yeah.
It's just sort of the car that you buy because you couldn't afford the newer one, but. It's really sort of only a matter of time. They're great cars. They aren't plagued by the issues that normally aspirated 996s were.
Yeah.
And look at $35,000 for one with miles probably in the 40s or 50s.
I mean, they're tremendous cars on the road.
They really are.
All right, one last one. Datsun 240Z.
I knew you were going to ask this.
I know, because
it's another one where I'm just.
But
No,
really, I mean, because
one.
they have gone up though. I mean, I like a good one, a decent one was $5,000 not that long ago, 7 or 8 years ago. Well, maybe it was
pretty long ago.
I guess 7 or 8 years ago is long now.
Yeah,
so.
no, for
Spinelli
a while,
years.
And Spinelli years. It's one Spinelli year.
I don't know. For a while, they looked kind of like the Triumph TR6 of the Japanese sports car world.
Wow.
In a sense that everybody said after the Austin Healey went up in value, well, that TR6 is next. It's sort of the spiritual successor of the big Healey with a kind of butch-looking styling and a 6-cylinder engine. But it never really did anything, and I'm not sure at this point that it ever really will. And 240s were another car that everybody said, look, these things are just going to go absolutely nuts at some point. And until really recently, it really hadn't started happening, but I kind of think that 2015 is going to be the year in which the nation's inventory of really nice under 20 grand 240Zs kind of clears out.
Wow.
So
you heard it here. I mean, get your 240Zs when you can.
Be really picky about what you buy. They rust like nobody's business.
Yeah, they're plagued with rust for sure.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have had one. I mean, do you have one? You have one right here.
Yeah, we have one, and it's going to be a cool car, but we've suffered with issues that they have. The rear shocks are basically unavailable if you want to have a lowered setup, so you have to switch to this like $4,000 like coilover setup.
Wow.
We managed to find one of the remaining pairs of Tokiko 5-way adjustables that would work for a lowered setup with a stock suspension. So,
and a lowered car is just what you want in Manhattan, right?
We don't go too crazy with it, but you have to have the right stance and the Wanatabe wheels.
And that car has it. I mean, even sitting up in a rack behind us.
Yeah.
It's got the stance.
It's a proper car, but it's taken us, kind of 8 months of digging around to sort it out.
But I mean, I feel like anything old with an inline 6 is kind of going to be something that,
E30
nuts.
BMW.
Yeah, exactly. The BMW, like pretty much the whole BMW range of that era.
6 Series E24
6 Series
that nobody seems to have taken a shine to just yet.
Right. I mean, if you go to Bring a Trailer, right? I mean, you will see all of these cars on Bring a Trailer.
Yes.
Like, I feel like Randy's site and like all the stuff he does, they're the canary in the coal mine a little bit. I mean, they're just right on. Like we have almost exactly the same taste in cars, and it's like you could really just go to that site every day and watch this unfold.
I love the site. That site is probably responsible for more marital discord in this country than anything that I know of. But Randy does a phenomenal job of curating what he puts up there. I like the new auction format that he started. He is, I don't want to call him an unsung hero because a lot of people know Randy and are big fans of the site, but it's cool. I mean, 8 a.m., that's in my inbox.
Yeah.
I open up, bring a trailer to see what's in there. It's fantastic.
Yeah. All right, so cool. Any parting words from a valuations expert on the car market in 2015?
Disregard everything I just said about 240Zs and Porsche 996s.
Forget all that stuff.
No, sorry,
Don't buy. Don't.
No, don't go there. At least not until I've gone there. Parting words. I think 2015 is going to be a pretty steady year. A year that sees considerably less year-over-year growth than we've seen in the last couple of years. I think that the top of the market's going to cool off, and then the middle of the market will cool off, and then the entry level will a little bit. So, but there are going to be localized pockets of insanity in terms of cars, being priced here one day and up here the next day.
Yeah. Well, we will try to be an island of calm in an ocean of insanity. Rob Sass.
It's great to be here.
Thanks for being on After Drive.
Thanks,
Zach Moseley from Classic Car Club Manhattan, and that's it. So, what do you guys think about any of the stuff that we've been talking about today? Put it in the comments, put it in social media, and you know what else to do with it. So that's it for After Drive today. I'll talk to you guys later.